a friend of yours for a long time, Jim Rutt, had me on his show, the Jim Rutt Show, to talk about the book because he likes to have one-on-one conversations. And I know him a little bit, but not very well. And you and he were really kind of, along with Jordan Hall and Jordan Greenhall and, a few other people whose names might be familiar to some listening, were, really present to help form Game B.
It was an informal, small group of people.
As of, gosh, I want to say 10-ish years ago now.
I think it was 2013.
Okay. So 8 years ago. So you and he, and indeed we, the very first paragraph of the acknowledgments in the book, we acknowledge Jim. We acknowledge some of the many evolutionary biologists whose shoulders we stand on, and some of whom we work with directly, and some of whom we just know from their written work. But then we also talk specifically about Game B and Jim Rutt, and that was really work that you did together. And so he has me on his show to talk about the things that are most interesting to him in the book. And it's of course right in his wheelhouse is the theory. And that's much more, to the degree, you and I are both evolutionary biologists. This is our book. These are our ideas. But to the degree that there are some that are, that started one place rather than the other, the theoretical stuff is more often likely to have started with you. And in the case of many of the things that Jim brought up in those conversations with him. And so having me be the person on the receiving end of these questions was fascinating. And I admit that at first, when it became clear that's where we were going, I thought, okay, let's see. We were writing it together and we were thinking it together, but it's not as native to me. And it was wonderful. I actually have listened to part of the conversation now, and I recommend it highly. We've got a lot of these out, but I really recommend the conversation that I had with Jim because it does go deeper in the theory than almost any of the other conversations we've had. It doesn't go into any of the applied stuff. It doesn't do sex and gender or sleep or food. But the reason I bring it up specifically is the benefit of flying solo sometimes. We talk a lot about how necessary it is to have someone who will be honest with you no matter what, with whom you can develop ideas, who will have your back, all of that. And it's also utterly necessary to step aside sometimes and say, okay, well, I'm on my own. No one's got my back here. There's no net underneath me. And let's see what I do. And to emerge out the other side intact and saying, oh yeah, okay, did it, got it, nailed it. Mostly, sometimes not, sometimes yes, is incredibly, it's kind of revelatory. And it's also empowering in a good way. And I was reminded of actually the first field season that I did in Madagascar that you weren't with me for. And I did have a field assistant. She was 10 years my junior, and I was not, I was in my 20s. So she was fabulous, Jessica, but she was not a peer in the way that you were. And she, I was teaching her evolution, and we were, learning about the sex lives of these poison frogs together. But doing hypothesis generation and prediction and experimental design and formal observational design and figuring out, how to do the actual field work, all of that on my own without a peer. Without that field season, there might still be a piece of me that wondered, could I? Could I do it without, just being able to throw ideas back and forth? Well, I did. And I would say that everyone, no matter how expert you are in your domain, should look for those opportunities to explore things that you have typically done with someone else alone as well.
Yeah, it's a really important point, and it also fits with what we discuss about the way ideas get passed between people and then parallel processed, and that's really the whole point of the exercise in the first place.
Yeah,
it makes thinking better, and it's really, it's very cool to have you interacting with Jim. Jim is somebody I tremendously value. Mm-hmm. I think it took a little while for us to understand each other. He sort of comes from a conservative background, and
actually I didn't say anything about who he is. So he's the former director of the Santa Fe Institute, right? And didn't he invent the word
Snail mail.
Snail mail. That's Jim Rutt's eponym.
It is unfortunately the thing for which he is most famous.
Oh, I shouldn't have said it then.
No, I was going to say it myself.
Okay.
He invented the concept of snail mail.
Yep. He invented the name, obviously. Yes.
No, the mail had existed for some time. It was originally delivered on horseback.
He's just not that old.
Right. He's just not that old.
No.
But anyway, Jim is a great guy, and he's somebody I frequently go to talk complex systems stuff.
And continue to talk Game B, right? I mean, we need something. We need this, right?
Well, what I sometimes say is that the thing about Game B, which was, effectively a small group of people who met and then disbanded, is that for many of us, once we had seen the idea of Game B and understood what it was and why it needed to exist, then we never got over it. There was no getting over it. The point is it's Game B until we figure out how to do it or die trying, right? Because the system isn't sustainable. It's going to be fatal to us if we don't replace it. And once you spot why a better world is not only possible, but that there's a mechanism for getting there that doesn't involve wishing it into existence. The question is what version of it? And so, it only has to be one version. Our version is described in here. Fourth Frontier is the view into it. But everybody who is of a Game B mindset has some version of it, and only one of them needs to work.
And so far as people I've met, everyone who has an idea of what Game B might look like recognizes that prescribing a blueprint won't work. And so there are various routes and plans and ideas, some of which will be inconsistent with one another. But I haven't seen a bunch of maps of the territory to which we're going that are inconsistent with one another, because the people who are thinking Game B style are not mapping out the future. They're trying to figure out how we can get on our way to a future that is sustainable and productive for all.
Well, I believe Jim will tell me if I'm wrong about this. He has a very good memory for these things, but I believe that was an insight I introduced into that discussion, was that we need to give up on the idea of a blueprint. It's impossible. What we need to do is think in terms of prototyping and navigating, because that's the only way to solve a puzzle like this. And anyway, to the extent that has caught on, I think that's good. It makes all of the efforts more likely to work.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, Jim's a great guy. I have not listened to your conversation yet, but I'm excited to hear it.
There's a lot to do.
There's so much going on.
No, and really it's just, there were just a number of questions he asked me that if we had both been on camera, we both would have just defaulted to you answering, not because either of us think I couldn't, but because it's more natively the kinds of things that in your downtime, that's what you think about. And I, am more likely to think about lizards.
Right. Exactly. I'm not against lizards.
There's not actually a lizard back here, much to my chagrin, but there's a book on lizards.
There's a couple books on lizards,
right? Snakes, tadpoles. Yeah. And Brett made this pile. I was just saying some of the other things, but Brett has made this pile in order to, Zach, show the screen again. For those listening, there's a pile of books behind me, and Brett made the pile, but as usual, put the books on bats on top.
Yes, I did.
On
I actually just took the pile of books that was sitting by my side of the bed.
Good one.
Light reading on tadpoles.
Yeah. No, you didn't know. You probably did not know that there was an entire book dedicated to tadpoles. But if you had known that, you might have imagined that I would own it. And in fact, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my next book might be dedicated to tadpoles.
Dedicated to tadpoles, but not on tadpoles.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely not going to be. I don't know that much about
tadpoles of the world, future and past.
Yeah, I don't know that much about. I know a little bit about tadpoles, but not enough for a book.
Yeah, I think we probably will not do a future episode dedicated to tadpoles, although I could fill an hour.
You probably could.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.